All right, here we go. Welcome, everybody, to the January 15, 2020 PowerApps community call. It's our first one of January, and we are glad to be back here after a couple months off for the holidays. So let's get going right away. And the first thing is about this call. If you haven't been here before, we do this call every month. And we do it on the third Wednesday of every month at 8 a.m. Pacific time. So our next call will be on February 19th. During this call, we cover the latest news and community contributions associated with PowerApps and a lot of the Power Platform as well. We meet the product teams who make PowerApps and the related technologies as well. We do technical deep dives to learn more about the different topics associated with PowerApps and all that good Power Platform goodness. And we have Q&A going on the entire time to get people's questions answered and help you out. So, a little bit about what we're going to cover on the call today. First, we're going to go through who's presenting today, and then we're going to talk about PowerApp ALM in particular solutions. And then Chuck's going to talk about PowerApps Power Virtual Agents. Hey, Chuck. And then we're going to go through our recent news and community activities. Lots of cool things happened over the holidays. Give out our monthly tips and wrap up with any Q&A that hasn't happened at that point yet. So who's presenting? Well, on the call, this is who you're usually going to see here is Chuck and myself, and then we have all kinds of people from product teams and community join us as much as we can. So that's me on the left, Todd Baginski. My company is called Canvas. You can find me there where you see on Twitter or YouTube or my blog. And we've also got Charles Sterling here, who I like to call Chuck. And hey, Chuck.
Hey, guys.
And you can reach out to Chuck there. And Chuck, you work at Microsoft and are ahead of all goodness associated with the PowerApps community, huh?
I'd like to think so.
All right. And then in addition to that, what I think really makes our call unique is that we have so many people right here who are awesome at PowerApps. So folks from MVPs, product team members, community champions, people who identify with themselves as power addicts. I think we all do here. So here are many of the folks here who I knew were going to be on the call ahead of time today. And if you look at the presenters section inside here of the Teams meeting, Chuck is promoting people to presenter when he sees folks who, are one of these folks who loves to help answer questions, jump in the call. So I see we've got, 14 people here already. So if you have a question, feel free to ask it in the chat. There's over a dozen people standing by to unblock you and help you out. So this is the power of this call, is all the community and the people. So thank you for everybody for being here and sharing your time and knowledge and helping other people out. So what are we going to talk about today? Well, I'm going to talk about ALM. And this has become a really big topic in PowerApps lately. I've met a lot of people at companies we've worked with who have started their journey into PowerApps or had someone else help them start their journey into PowerApps. And what I found out in many cases is people have PowerApps either proliferating just natively throughout their org by just people becoming a PowerApp maker because they can by default in a PowerApp environment. And PowerApps are spreading like wildfire throughout their environment. And companies are like, how do we get this under control? And I've also met other folks who have said, we want an ALM story. We haven't started with PowerApps yet. What does that look like? And by ALM, we mean application lifecycle management. In other words, what do you do to ensure that as PowerApps are built in your organization, you know about them, you know who's making them, they're following your policies and procedures, you're controlling the rollout, and you're also setting yourself up in a position so that you can develop them as a professional would, where you have one environment to develop, maybe another to test, and definitely another that is just for production where those PowerApps get used. And so because this is a huge topic, and Microsoft's actually done a lot of investment in this lately, which we'll get to in a second, we're going to talk about it for the beginning of 2020 here. So here's the plan that Chuck and I put together on it, and this may evolve, and if we get ideas from the community, we may add more to it. In January, this basically is briefing on what is ALM and what is a solution and an overview. And so that's what I'm going to do today. In February, we're probably going to have Casey Burke on from the PowerApps engineering team, and he's going to talk about enhancing solutions and using environment variables with them. In March, we're going to get into using PowerShell to automate solution packaging and deployment. And I know that Microsoft does this internally with some of the groups we work with on PowerApps there, and we are also using it to help other clients. So that's something cool we can show you. That is a lot of the automation piece there in March. And then in April, I think we're going to try to get Per on, right, Chuck? And have him talk a little bit about the Azure DevOps way to do that same automation of solution packaging and deployment. And so if you've got another idea, put it in chat. Chuck's watching it, Dana's watching it, a lot of people watching the chat there. We can note that and get that into what we want to talk about with ALM. And the approach that we have here, as you can see on the slide, is we don't have enough time in the community call every month to do a deep dive on every single one of these topics to the nth degree and make you an expert. But what we do have time to do, and still get in more and more besides ALM every month, is to give you a high-level overview of the concept and demo that to you, and then arm you with resources and links so you kind of have some homework, if you will. If you're interested in doing this ALM, you know where to go learn to the nth degree about what we showed on the call. And our hope is, if ALM is something you want to put into your environment and the environments you work with by the end of the first quarter here, or third of the year, that you'll be in the position to do that and we can help guide you on your way. So with that in mind, really what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump right into a demo of Power Platform Solutions here. So let me flip over to a different screen here. And the first thing I'd like to tell you is, so what is a solution and where do we find this inside of Office 365? Well, here you can see I've gone to make.powerapps.com and I've logged in. And on the left side, I've selected solutions. And so here is the list of solutions that are in this particular environment. You can see that some of them, common data services, default solution, and default solution, these come with your PowerApps environment. And in the links we have, you can read more about what you put into these solutions, how you can use these solutions. You may want to add to these solutions. You may want to just add to your own solutions. It really depends on a lot of different factors. And I'm not going to get into them all, but just point out, go do some reading about these and learn more about them. And so what does a solution do? Well, what a solution does is it allows us to take any component we have practically in the Power Platform, allows us to package it up and put it in this thing called a solution. And so it's really just a zip file. And if you come from a SharePoint background, you may be familiar with the terminology solutions there. I see Dan nodding his head. A good old WSP file in SharePoint. It's the same thing. It's a zip file. It contains a bunch of information and assets in it that tell the deployment engine how to deploy those assets to another environment in a repeatable fashion. And so what you can do is you can make a new solution by clicking this new solution button. But before I make a new solution, I want to show you an example of a really complex solution. And that is the one for the Power Platform Center of Excellence. And this is also part of the ALM and governance story. Maybe we should do this on 1 month as well, Chuck. Maybe we could get Manuela on here to chat about this piece. But what we're looking at here is a solution anybody can download in the whole world for the Power Platform Center of Excellence. And when you go Google that or Bing it and find it, you'll go download this an installer for this solution file, and you'll install it in your environment. And I've done that in this environment. You can see I did it 6 days ago here. It tells you when you did that. And so inside of this solution, you can see there's many different things it contains. Look at all these flows. You see the type column here? It's got a whole bunch of flows that support this solution. It's got a web resource for an admin icon. I've got some entities for CDS. You can see I've got Canvas apps, option sets, more web resources. Look, here's a model-driven app, client extension. This is a very big solution. And then even security roles here. Now, I know I've talked about security roles on this call before and how you could package them in a solution and roll them out with your Power App when you're working with CDS. And this is just another example. So as you can see, there's tons of different things, even a business process workflow right here that are packaged inside the solution. And so what does it look like if we make our own then? Well, I'm going to walk you through that today. So I'm going to make a solution and just call this one Power App Community Call Demo. And you can create your own publisher. But before I do that, I almost tricked myself. I'm in the wrong environment. Let me move over to a different one. I'm glad I saw that up front. So as I mentioned, the power of a solution here is that I can go from one environment to another. And so what I'm going to do is, you can see I'm in what I call my development environment in this tenant. And I also have this default environment, which I'm going to pretend is just production. So here I am in the default environment. And if I go into solution, I can pick new solution, give it that name I was going to give it before. And then here I can pick a publisher, and I can make new publishers if I want, or I can use the default. Again, that's just something that is up to you, and you'll want to go read a little bit more about that in the solution documentation to see what makes sense for you. But just to demonstrate, I made my own publisher and I named it after me, and then I give it a number here of my version. And then I hit create, and that goes real quick. Bang, I got a solution, and here it is. And so now it's empty. And so now I can go add things into it. And here's where some like real world stuff comes into play that I see Matt Schuessler, Matt works with me, and Matt ran into this just a couple weeks ago. And we learned a little bit about solution packaging as a result. So when you're working with a solution, let's say you've already developed a bunch of Power Apps, a bunch of flows, entities, your entire piece of the puzzle, if you will, for developing an application in the Power Platform. But you haven't put it in a solution yet. And now you're coming to put it in a solution so you can do this more, robust ALM. And you're going to run into some interesting things. And I'd like to show you what those things are. So, for example, if I come over and I look at the flows, again, you can see I'm in the default development environment here. And I have 3 flows in this environment. This one gets updates from the flow blog. It starts with an RSS trigger. This one is an Excel flow, which starts with an Excel trigger. And this one is a SharePoint flow for a selected item one. So you notice I called these out. I said I made it before the call. I made it before the call. I did for this one too. So I have 3 flows, and let's go add those to the solution. So I go up to add existing, and then I go down to flow, and I say, okay, here's the flows outside of the solutions. Wait a second, there should be 3 here, right? I saw them right here. Why aren't the Excel and the SharePoint ones available for me to add? And the reason is up here. See this little attention icon? Some flows are currently not available to add solutions. If you click learn more here, this will take you to a link which tells you more details about which solutions you will and will not be able to add, or which flows at this time you can't add. So why is that important, and how does that get back to real world? Well, when Matt discovered this, it turns out that what we're working on has 7 flows in it, and they were all created outside of a solution. All of them are this type of solution right here on the SharePoint selected item trigger. And so we're actually not able to just select them like I can here and add it into my solution. Instead, the only workaround is actually to recreate each one of those flows from scratch using this process. I'm in the solution and I say new flow. And now it takes me over to flow and I start making my new flow. And here I can then get the Let me find the SharePoint one for selected item again. Right there. This is the same trigger that I had before that I wasn't able to add because it wasn't added within the solution. So now you can see, though, when I am inside of my editor, because I initiated this from inside of add a new item to the solution, here I'm able to do it. So what I'm going to do is just finish this out with just one quick action here real quick and just initialize a variable. And this will allow me to save. And now that I have saved this flow and it finishes, as soon as it says saving and it is finished save, we go back to the page we were at before. I've never seen this one take so long to save before. Let's try it anyway. I'll come back a little earlier than it says done. It says you're currently creating flow. When you're done, come back here and hit done. Okay, we can see that that one did get saved. Now I'll hit done and you'll see, boom, now it's added in there. And so although, and that's something to keep an eye on, right? You want to plan ahead of time and make your things inside of a solution. Otherwise, you may end up reinventing what you just reinvented because you're not able to package it in currently. So there I added a couple flows. What else can I add? Well, let's add a Canvas app, for example. So here I can come in and I can show you a Canvas app that I have in my environment right back here. And this is my development environment. You see this one? This is the leave request app here, phone format, and I made it just a couple hours ago so I could add it here. This is just one of the out-of-the-box templates you can get from the web.powerapps.com. So I can come back here, I can select that Power App, and it's added. And so on and so forth goes the story on how you add things to solutions. As you can see, you can add Canvas apps, model-driven apps, dashboards, entities, environment variables. Look at all this stuff. Pretty much everything you need. Chuck, when we were chatting about this yesterday, you mentioned another thing that if you didn't create it inside of a solution, you would have to recreate it. What was that other item?
Yeah, AI Builder, you can't add the entities that it creates the models, and you can't even actually create them inside the solution. For right now, it's just a point in time that we need to fix. And like this end-to-end, I know that we're targeting April for. We're also targeting to have that done for April as well. Some of the fixes that you're looking at now, or some of the issues that you're fixing out now, I know they're going to have some of the changes in next week, but it's an ongoing process. It's actually not going to give you an end-to-end solution. But gotcha. Yeah, AI Builder not available in solutions yet, and we're working on it.
Gotcha. So the story is good right now, and it's just getting better. Basically, is what this is all about.
It's actually a mandate to the team that they can't release features unless they're solution aware anymore. So the AI Builder team squeaked in before that. But you know the monitoring, the app monitoring in Canvas apps, where you can go out and see every call and how long it took? Yeah. They actually had to delay it being shipped to make sure that it was solution aware.
Gotcha. Oh, that's good to see that they're putting that due diligence into that.
Yeah.
Awesome. So there I just published all these customizations that makes them available to everyone who has access to them in the tenant, not just the people who are developing them. And now I'm ready to export this solution and take it over to my production environment. So that's really easy. You just click export, and here it'll remind you to publish or run the checker to check for issues. I'm just going to skip that. And then here's where you get to choose, do you want a managed or an unmanaged solution? And so that would take probably about 5 minutes to talk through the difference of those and all the different iterations on how they work. I encourage you to go read about that part. And the links that I'm going to show you in just a bit in the other slides, in the slide deck we will publish, do a very good job with diagrams of explaining the differences and what these are and why you pick one over the other. When I'm done picking those options, then I will go pick export. And essentially when I export, it just made that zip file. So here's my zip file, and I'll open it up to show you. This is what it looks like. So you can see, here's the Canvas app. And just like you would export a Canvas app, there's the MS app file. And in the workflows, here's the JSON definitions of those flows. So now that I have that downloaded, let's go take it to another environment. So now I'm going to flip over to a different environment, and now I'm in my default environment. And here you can see I have a leave request, but it's not that same one called PACC. And if I look at the flows here in this particular environment, we'll also see that those two flows that I just created and put into that package, they don't exist in this environment yet. So over to the Solutions tab we go. You can see that that new solution I made is not here. I click Import. This is going to pop a new dialog. And at this point, I'm basically just going to upload that zip file and then click Next a couple times and wait for it to import. And sometimes this little pop-up takes a little bit longer than you would expect. Other times it goes really quick. I think I'll try it again here. Chuck, are there any questions popping up in the chat related to this so far?
Yeah, Rez actually mentioned that UI flows also are not solution aware. They're still in preview. At release, they will be. So when they go GA, and then that's one of the ones that me and Todd talked about as far as including that in one of the topics for the community calls. But we're going to do probably an NDA one for the MVPs first, but we'll positively have it on the community call. Yeah, cool. So that was from Reza that brought that one up.
It's one of those things that if you haven't attempted to package that thing yet or didn't make it ahead of time, you might not even know that. It's kind of one of those tribal knowledge lesson learned things. So as you can see, the import is going on here, and now it's going to give us a report and tell us how that did. And you can see there's a warning on it. And this one says the error has occurred, try this action again. So whenever I see that, I just go back and I do the exact same thing before. And what's interesting is I've actually seen this exact same behavior all yesterday and today as I've rehearsed this demo here. 2 times is what it takes for me each time.
And I think it gets back to a question that Rick has for you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to read it for you. When a Power App is in a solution, and that solution is exported, is it correct that only the live version is part of that solution export package? So the latest versions which are not published are not. Can you speak to that a little bit? So what he's talking about is if you haven't published your Power App and you build a solution package, it looks like he's saying that, and I think this is right, it is not part of that solution export package. Does that make sense?
Haven't published your Power App.
Yeah,
so you've made a Power App inside of a solution.
Outside of it, or it actually doesn't matter. So, and you made some changes, but you haven't published the changes.
Uh-huh.
And then you export the solution. Does that include the unpublished or the published version? And I think what he's saying, and I believe this is right, is that you get the published version and you don't pick up the unpublished changes.
I've never tried that.
David just confirmed, and this is what I ran into last night, is that the unpublished ones are not in the solution package. You only get the published changes. Hey, okay. Todd, I'm gonna set your expectation. I already set Dana in the call. It's gusting up to about 30 miles an hour here, and these trees are full of snow. So if all of a sudden my demo's cut short, I'm gone.
We know what happened. Okay,
exactly.
Got it. Yeah. So while you were asking that, I re-imported it again, the solution, and that time I got a message that everything worked. It was just one message related to the redeployment. And so now, here we go. I've got the solution, and look, I've got my flows and my Power App available in the new environment. So if I go over to Apps now, here we can see the Power App. And all I have to do is click it, and boom, I'm up and running with my Power App. Allow my connections, and everything will load immediately. Just like it does when you export and import a Power App, except you exported and imported it via solution. The other thing is, if I go over to my flows inside of this default environment, you'll notice they are not in the list here. So why is that? Well, it's actually by design. If you have a flow that you import by a solution, it will not show up in the list of flows. In order to see it, you'll have to come to the solution itself, and then you can click on the flow. And at that point, you can open it up inside of the flow editor. Now, there's some things to keep in mind as you're editing or these things inside of solutions, whether it's managed or unmanaged, your ability to edit it and how that will get overwritten with subsequent deployments of solutions, and whether those solutions are managed or unmanaged as well. So again, I'll get back to that for the third time. Go do your reading on managed versus unmanaged and wrap your head around that. It's very important to know as you create your solutions inside of PowerApps. And so now we've seen it, right? Front to back, one environment to the other, very simple to do. And that is a really high level overview of the Power Platform Solutions 101. And so after Chuck does his demo here on the Power Platform agents, I'm going to come back and walk you through some different links that you can use to ramp up on solutions and get yourself to that 101 level. So when we come back next month, you'll be ready for the next piece of the puzzle and how we start to do some more enhanced things like environment variables with solutions to make them even more portable and quicker to use. So with that, Chuck, I'm going to turn it over here to you.
Okay, so Power Virtual Agents. I've been having so much fun playing with these guys. You know, the big promise about, you know, citizen developer, no code and running applications, I think that this team's actually really delivered on this. I don't know that there is some places to add code. We're going to walk through that Friday. But in general, you just go out and put text and you actually give value back to your users and you can actually kind of interact with them. If you haven't looked at Power Virtual Agents, here's one right here. So this is one I actually created last night. And if I go out and just type in hello, it says, hey, I'm your Power Virtual Agent bot. And I can go out and say store hours, and it will go out and say, hey, this is the information. This is a website that comes stock. There are 14 different channels you can deploy to. But it gives you an iframe, so you can deploy it to almost anything. I was playing with this earlier. Here's a Canvas app that I put my bot into. If you wondering how I did that, there's an iframe PCF control from a hero named Yash, who's actually asleep because he's in India. So a big shout out to him. Thank you for that. But I thought I would walk through how to create one of these and what does this look like. So if you haven't created one yet, you can go to the home page, which is aka.ms/try-PVA. And that link is actually in these slides. So it's try PVA is actually the link. And that's actually this page. You click on that button. And if you've never created a bot before, it goes out and gives you this interface. So you go out and gives some interface like Daniel is a star. So I can see Daniel on my video nodding yes and choose create. And what that gives you is this. This is actually literally me typing in IAD because I'm actually playing with app in a day and I'm actually layering the bots into app in a day. And the way you interact with that is something called topics. And it goes out and gives you these topics right off the bat. Actually, color is one that I added. And let's go ahead and show you how hard it is to add a new topic. So let's just say I want to look at manufacturers. So if I was going to order this and go out and say, clearly manufacturer would be one. Maybe you would actually have another trigger phrase of who builds computers. And this is actually going to start that interaction where I can go out and say, hey, what are the store hours? And now you could go out and say, but I want to have a conversation around that. That's the trigger phrase. What are you going to say? Now, rather than actually having a message, I might want to go ahead and delete this and go in and just ask a question. And maybe my question is which manufacturer are you looking for? And you could go out and have, I don't know, Lenovo and Microsoft, etc. I don't know if you can see at the bottom as I'm typing this in, what it's doing is it's actually giving me a flow or a branch condition for each one of these. So let's add one more and let's just say Dell. You can say that there's the Dell one. And let's say that now, based on the fact that if someone that chooses Dell, I want to go out and maybe call a flow from Power Automate to order a Dell computer. And now this is actually one of the things that a lot of people are getting are having challenge with. I've got some of the superstars on the call, like Joe Gill's on the call. It's been answering a lot of the questions, and people seem to have problems with this. Now, what the team's done to make it easier, they've added this create flow button, which does two things. It goes out and adds the JSON parser as its action, which is good, so you can go out and see what was being requested, and it sets up the trigger to be an HTTP request. So you're set up to succeed almost right off the bat. But if I go out and say, I love, oops, I gotta spell that right, Joe Gill, and I can save that as my flow, and I go back here, and I go out back and say, call an action, I won't see the I love Joe Gill. You can scroll up and down. And any guesses as to why? It actually gets back to a question that Reza Durrani asked in the chat window. I've got a beer opener stainless steel USB key. If someone can actually answer that question, is why am I not seeing the flow that I just created? I will give it a 3 count. See if anybody has that. Yeah, hashtag Yash is amazing. A lot of people actually, I've been having conversations about Yash, and a lot of people don't think he's a real human, or they think he's a team of people. He really is a person, one guy. Okay, so it has to do with today's, it's not a solution. Uday, oh, actually, someone beat him. Reza actually beat it in there. So the fill, it was active, but Reza and Uday actually, I think, came in at the exact same time. It's not in a solution, i.e. all of what Todd was demoing. So if I go back into my flows, oh, actually, I need to go to my solutions and open up any solution. It doesn't really matter. Unlike AI Builder, where it has to be in the common data service solution, this one I could go ahead and open up the device ordering solution, add existing, just exactly like what Todd did, and I add my, where's flow? Am I not looking at? Oh, here it is, flow. And I find the whatever it was. I love Joe. Oh, outside solutions. There we go. I love Joe. Say add. And now I think I'm gonna have to save this and then refresh it, because I don't know that it's gonna come up. Let's see if it'll come up while it's saving. Oh, it did. I didn't even have to refresh the whole page. So there, I love Joe. So that was a shout out to Reza and Uday, who've actually hit this. A lot of people are running into it. If you're still not seeing your flow after you've gone out and had the HTTP request as a trigger, you have the JSON parser as your action, and it's in a solution, more than likely your JSON actually is malformed and it's not parsing correctly, and Flow's not saving it, or Power Automate's not saving it. So what else? That was mostly what I wanted to cover, but some of the other things that you really want to are pretty exciting is entities actually set the Power Virtual Agents bots apart from some of the other offerings, where if I went back in here and said, I want a black, Lenovo that is, I don't know, some price point, June, etc. And I go out and type in all this information about, no, I don't have a trigger that captures that, so it doesn't know quite how to parse it. But what's happening is underneath of the covers, a lot of these things like the color, the manufacturer, the price point, they're actually getting added into, where am I at? Something called entities. So they're actually getting populated, and I can go ahead and create my own of like color. I think color's already here, and date and price, to where they get auto-populated, and I can actually use those back into my flow. Authenticated is even an entity type, where I can go out and say, oh, am I authenticated or not? And I can go out and say, I want those people to be authenticated, and I can actually make a decision in my bot to say, if they're authenticated, give them this price, and if they're not, give them that price. It's pretty interesting, the things that you can do. That price point is confused. Yes, it is, David. Sorry about that. I should have given a real price. The other thing that actually is really important for this audience is that if I went out and created a bot and I put it inside of my Canvas app and it went out and answered, I don't know, 80% of the questions, you'd want to know what were the other 20% that you're not answering, or even the 80% you think that are answering. are there abandons? And the analytics will go through. Now, this is not a good example because I just created this bot. This is my Daniel as a star. I should probably go out and take a look at the other one that we're just looking at. Here we go. We can actually see something as far as a couple runs. By the way, if you notice right here, I don't know if you saw it real quick. All of these, yeah, Daniel saw it. All of these are actually Power BI reports that we're embedding ourselves. So this is actually a Power BI embedded report, and you can actually get the data itself. So you can go out and take a look at the sessions and export those. But you can actually see what were every single run, what pathways did people go through, and whether or not they were satisfied and did they answer the questions. Because part of the bot experience at the end says, does it answer your question? Okay. And I talked about the channels. There are 14 by default. This is actually how I was building those. Let's show you how you would actually deploy a bot to something else. So I'm going to go ahead and grab my bot URL. And if I go into, I don't know if you guys have been playing with PowerApps portals, but here's one that I threw together. And if you aren't familiar with Canvas, this is actually Todd's company, so they actually do lots of training, and I built one for them. And now, let's say that they've been running an ad for our friends at PowerBI.tips, Mike Carlo and Seth Bauer, and I want to go ahead and put my bot in there. If I go ahead and save that, I think I just need to actually refresh this and browse the website. There it is. And browse the website. Where'd my website here go? Now when I refresh this, there, it's already refreshing. I don't even have to do it. You'll actually see that my bot is now deployed in my PowerApps portal. Just that easy. So let's go back into the other authentication. Again, is actually what domain do you want to actually have these bots authenticated against? So that's pretty cool. I can go back out and use things like Facebook and Twitter or my AAD. And then finally, skills are where I can go out and reuse entire bots built in the Azure bot framework as actions. So let's go ahead and go back into one of these topics. And we were playing with this one earlier. And we go out and go to the authoring canvas. And you'll see that under my actions right now, all I see are flows. If I register a skill, I can actually see different bots that I can call directly into. Let me give you an example. Maybe I run a veterinarian site, and I want to go ahead and have a separate bot for dogs and separate one for horses. And I could go ahead and call those and say, or refer to those. And that's actually a call that we are going to do on Friday. So Friday, and that is not a low-code, no-code solution. That is a full-on Visual Studio Azure bot framework. But I can actually call those as an action from my no-code solution. So I can start integrating and actually layering on top of those. So Todd, I think I actually covered all of the Power Virtual Agents in, I don't know, 13 minutes. Todd, any other questions?
I don't have any more about that. I did see somebody, somebody asked the question in here, and I think it got answered, but I just want to double check. Someone said, is there any way to pull in the options for the questions from somewhere else dynamically, or do we have to hard code? Oh, that was Pontus who asked that.
So yes, great
said
question.
that you can pull them from an FAQ page dynamically and provided a link on how to do that.
Yes, we talk about what's new. And that's actually a blog post I just published yesterday for Thomas on my team. So yes, you can actually have a bot troll a website and pull in those trigger phrases and actually the start of the topics. So that's actually the first one. I can actually learn from your website. And that is actually on the Power Virtual Agents blog. That was a post that we published yesterday. And then I also promised a bot skills webinar link, and there it is that we're actually going to be looking at on Friday. And again, I want to set expectations. The first thing that we're going to be going into is Visual Studio for Code, and we're going to be registering some manifests to actually get it working inside of Power Virtual Agents. But hopefully you'll actually see that creating bots is fun, super, super powerful, positively delivers on the low code, or in this case, no code solution for delivering all kinds of topics. And what I do, instead of just calling flows, a lot of times I actually will refer people back to links. Like, here's a PDF file, or here is actually the form that needs to be filled out. And it breaks me from actually creating UI for delivering applications. So if I can shim this stuff into something where people can interact with it, I can actually deliver that value. An interesting statistic I was just looking at was that 65% of all the people that call in support, so 65% of all people that call in support would rather actually self-service rather than calling or talking to somebody. The average price for some of our customers we've been talking to for a phone call starts at $5. That's the minimum buy-in price. One of the questions that we haven't gotten, or I haven't seen in this call, was how much does it cost to actually run this? There is a 60-day trial up front, so that's free, and then there's another 30 days you can add on to the top of that. After that, the runs cost 50 cents each, and unfortunately, you do have to buy 2,000 runs worth. So it's $1,000 buy, and I've seen a couple people on Twitter asking about that. I have actually given the feedback back to the team that they would like to have a graduated or somewhere maybe even at 75 cents where they only have 100 runs or something like that, where they can actually buy into it at a smaller price point. And that's not in the short-term plans. I have actually talked to the marketing team and said, hey, this is something that we keep hearing time and time again. Any plans? And that's not yet in the plans. At 50 cents each, that's certainly palatable. The fact that you have to buy so many is makes it kind of tough after the trial.
So
Any
Chuck,
other
one detail for you. Your USB key you offered to give out, I was looking in chat, and this gentleman, Federico Marone, he was the first one to say you need to put it in a solution.
Okay. So there wasn't
so
present, wasn't.
We'll follow up with him.
Yeah. So my email address is chass@microsoft.com. Drop me a piece of email. We'll figure out how to get you one of those USB keys or something for actually knowing that. And the question I'm not going to ask, I know how long it took for me, is how long did it take you to discover this page and figure out that this was the thing that you were actually missing? So I'm not going to embarrass myself. I won't tell you how long it took me the first time I was playing with it, but it took longer than I wanted to. Hence the demo that we did today, showing you that, or reinforcing, solutions are important and they're going to be ubiquitous, and they actually are biting people trying to use Power Virtual Agents. So Todd, back to you, my friend.
All right. Thanks for the demo on that. That's really cool stuff. And I got to kick the tires on that and try that out down at Ignite on the expo floor like 2 days after they announced it. And that was really fun. I couldn't believe that in the course of, I had someone guiding me through it when I built it, and we built a very simple question and answer. But the point is within like 5-10 minutes, we had built the 100 level bot right there. And it just blew my mind, having coded them in C# with the SDK before, how easy it was. Let's see. Oh, I got Uday like, I got all excited for the USB stick. Maybe we should give out more than one, Chuck.
I was going to say, I declared Uday a winner. So you're also a winner. So both of them.
All right. Yay.
And Rez has got a bag full because I put him in his bag in San Diego before he left.
All right.
Do they actually work? The Power BI ones I had, some of them worked, some of them didn't. You might want to test those out.
So the box I give you, Christina, seem to have problems with the ones I've actually been using. I have been using, and they've been working. So yeah.
Ooh, I want one next time I see you, please.
Okay.
Can I give a shout out to tips for solutions, right? So my biggest tip for solutions, when you go and use them, don't use them in a new environment, right? Let that environment stew for a day or two. Let it get all of the PowerApps checker and everything installed in it, spin up a portal, even if you're going to use it or not, and just get all of that cruft, that like all of that sort of Microsoft stuff that they're going to put in there done and out of the way with, and then start building your solutions. Otherwise, you're going to be scrolling up and down for hours and hours and hours on end, getting to and from your solution. So it will save you a bunch of time and some RSI.
How long do you usually wait on that, Keith?
2 days. 2 days
2
for the
days?
PowerApps checkout, and I get the just touching the portal will install all of the bits and pieces. And I think there's a little blog somewhere on how to uninstall it as well. There's a little PowerShell commandlet or something that you run, a bit of XML to think you've got to uninstall them in the order that they were installed. But just get everything in there that you're ever going to need as default before you start using that environment to have solutions in, because otherwise it's just going to be an unordered mess until someone comes up with something a lot more elegant.
Gotcha. I guess I got lucky because we stand up all our environments usually ahead of time and then don't end up using them for a couple of days. I never stood one up and moved a solution right into it and ran into that. Thanks for that tip. That's a big one. So, yeah, here's the resources that you can look at to ramp yourself up on this. And I really put them in the order that I did it during the call here today. So go read the docs top down here. Get an overview, learn how they work in PowerApps, create one, import one, export one. And you'll learn how to do exactly what I showed here today and a whole lot more about it. This documentation, there's not a ton of it. You can get through this in an hour and a half and have a good, effective time to read it and really focus in on the material. And then I'd like to point out Office 365 Developer Podcast. My friend Jeremy runs this podcast with Paul Schaeflein, and another guy in the industry named Chris O'Brien. He lives over in the UK, and I've had the opportunity to meet Chris several times in person over the years at various events. And if you guys don't know about Chris, he's awesome at SharePoint and Office 365 and has an incredible blog. And when I saw he was on with Jeremy, I was like, oh, that's definitely, I want to tune in and listen to that one. And I tuned in and listened, and they actually ended up talking about PowerApps. And they talked about the Power Platform Center of Excellence Starter Kit and how Chris and his team went to a large company and installed that and used it to help out their customers with ALM. And so if you're interested in getting a hold on your PowerApps ALM story and governance, I encourage you to listen to that quick chat that he had with Jeremy about that, because you can listen firsthand on how they used it within a company to make a difference and really help that company with their Power Platform story internally. Recent news, well, again, here we are in this ALM theme. The Power Platform Center of Excellence Starter Kit just got an update back in December. And so all kinds of cool new things in that update. I encourage you to go read up on that. More governance, the Power Platform Admin and Governance White Paper is now available with an update. And so I remember that white paper came out in 2018, if I remember correctly, and it's just recently been updated with some of the new technology and things available for us. So I encourage you to go check that out as well. Some things not related to ALM is Canvas apps now have components in Canvas apps now have support for their own connectors directly to the component, which is a really big deal because now your component completely stand on its own, including how it accesses data and be portable from one Power App to another. Then these last two, I found the bottom link yesterday on Twitter, and I saw the top link here from Matt shared it with me this morning, and they kind of go hand in hand, and they're really cool. These two articles will show you how to take Office UI Fabric icons and turn them in SVG, and then to add those SVG icons to your Power Apps. So if you're trying to brand your Power Apps with Office UI Fabric and the icons within it, this is an incredible 1-2 punch to allow you to do that. Moving on, the community contributions. So all these folks I spotted on Twitter with either this hashtag or just something they shared with regard to Power Apps caught my eye. And there's Yash's name popping up again, and Emmanuel. He is the one who is responsible for that icon generator. I believe Chris was also involved in one of those two blog posts. I'm trying to remember who did which, but Yuka here as well. All these folks, go follow them on Twitter, or at least follow this hashtag if you're looking for people who are putting out good, cool, quality content on how you can do neat things and good things with PowerApps. Thanks to everybody. Like this whole call is awesome, and this whole community is awesome. My tips related to ALM for this month. Treat your Power Platform ALM just like you would any other technology. Whether you're doing ASP.NET or Node.js or Angular or React development or SharePoint framework or whatever the story may be, you've got an ALM story. Make another one for PowerApps, and don't just treat it like the Wild West. Plan your story up front. Hopefully by the end of the series of the next few months with our call here, you'll know everything you need to at least get started on your planning, if not make your whole plan. And then put everything you can inside of solutions. Chuck's got a few tips for everybody this month as well.
All right, number one, go out and build a bot. There's that link. Go out and hit it. You do need to have an environment, so you might have to create an environment first, but it's just as easily giving a name, and it's really easy to get started. So that's my number one tip. Number two, it's actually been in the chat window a couple of times. Before you reinvent the wheel, please do go out and take a look at the community.powerapps.com gallery. There's tons and tons of pretty amazing samples in there. And if you actually have written a cool sample and you want to share it, please hit the upload button. Share that wealth of knowledge with other people so that way they can take advantage of it as well. And if you aren't already a member of your local user group, again, most of the people who are actually answering these questions are your local user group presidents. Go out and join your local user group, and you can meet these guys. Keith runs London. Todd runs the one in Cincinnati. Is that where you're? What's the one that you guys run?
Actually, Vivek heads that one up, but I've come and been part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So Vivek runs the Cincinnati one. Shane runs his, and again, so all of these people you can actually go out and interact with and learn from the best and become the best. So join your local user group, guys.
And you know what? I just saw Daniel point out in the chat, find your local app in a day event. That is so true. It's a great way in one day for lots of the folks on this call host those too. Go out, meet those folks, and go through a focus training where you start with nothing and you walk out building a Power App and some flows and learning about CDS and all other kind of Power Platform things in the course of a single day. It's a great program. So that'll wrap it up for our first call of the year here. Thanks everybody for joining us today. We will have this call available soon on the Office Developer YouTube channel. And hopefully we see you all on February 19th for our next call in the of the year here for Power Platform Power Apps call. Thanks again, everybody. Thanks, Chuck. Thanks, everybody, for answering the questions, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.